Good evening. I'm Forrest Sawyer, and this is Day One. Tonight, why did the Mississippi courts give custody of Tammy Brown's children to their grandparents?
I'm in love with a black man.
Would they be reacting this way had I been white?
This was not the issue. Some of my best friends are blacks.
A battle over morality and racism, and a family torn apart.
She's not gonna give up, trying to get her children back.
Not until somebody tells me why.
It was the ultimate Pepsi challenge.
New reports today of syringes found in cans of Pepsi or Diet Pepsi.
A tampering scare that threatened to chase away the Pepsi generation. Was it all a hoax?
I'm calling AP. Could you call Janowski at the Times?
Behind the scenes, as a corporate giant contains a crisis.
I knew that I was being mistaken for being dead.
Right out of a nightmare, people declared dead who are still alive.
I said, Stan, you better get down here. We've got this dead body down here doing things I've never seen a dead body do.
It happens more often than you think.
You can't tell whether a heart is beating or not. People are dying that need not die.
Absolutely.
And
summertime, summertime.
a day at the beach with a lifelong lifeguard who's been watching the waves for 50 summers.
What's age got to do with it? If you can cut the mustard, go ahead and do it.
From ABC News, Forrest Sawyer, Sheila McVicker, John Hockenberry, Michelle McQueen, Jay Shadler, John McKenzie, and Lloyd Kramer. This is Day One.
Our first story tonight is about a 29-year-old waitress named Tammy Brown, a mother of two, now living in Southern California. 4 years ago, Tammy fell in love. 1 year later, she lost custody of her children. And since then, she's been fighting to get them back and trying to figure out how it could have happened. Now that sounds like an ordinary custody battle, but it is much more than that. It's in fact a fight over two big issues, racism and morality. And caught in the middle of this family struggle are two children who haven't seen their mother for more than a year. Jay Shadler traveled from Mississippi to California and came back with a story of Tammy's kids.
Two boys and their summer smiles. A perfect picture if something weren't missing. Their mother is struggling to be part of their lives.
Yes, some people would say I can't fight no more. You throw their hands up and walk away from it. Can't do that. There's no way I can do that.
Tammy Brown lives in West Los Angeles. For 3 years, she's been in a custody battle for her sons Chris and Stephen, who live 1,700 miles away in Meridian, Mississippi. Her fight is with these people.
The children's welfare, their well-being was not uttermost in Tammy's mind. Tammy was doing what Tammy wanted. Not what was best for the boys, but what was best for Tammy, what Tammy wanted done.
Faye and Joe Thomas are the boys' grandparents. The children are with them because they believe Tammy is morally unfit to be the children's mother. Until 5 years ago, Tammy was married to the Thomas's son, Joe Allen. But his excessive drinking and quick temper drove Tammy and the boys away. They moved to Los Angeles. In their divorce decree, Tammy was granted custody of the children. She agreed to let them spend summer vacations with their grandparents back in Meridian. It was during one of those summer visits when the trouble began, when the boys told the Thomases about a man named Jake Brown.
They talked about this man named Jacob Brown. Then one of the children said, we were not supposed to tell this. Mother told us not to tell anything that, went on in California.
And Stephen started crying.
Yeah, the younger one cried because he thought the older one had told something that his mother had told him not to tell.
That must have piqued your interest.
Of course it did.
At the end of the summer, kids were supposed to come back to you. What happened?
They called the day before the children were due home. I'm all excited. Yay, my kids are coming home. grandfather said, "We're not bringing them back." I questioned why. And they said, as long as I'm dating a black guy, we're not bringing the kids back. That's not the words they used, but that's the words I like to use.
What words did they use?
Nigger.
That is a lie. And
I don't recall saying that.
No.
Have you ever used the word nigger?
No.
Oh,
never in your life?
No, in
yes,
my life,
I'm
yes.
sure we have.
Sure. But a nigger and a black person to me is two different people. I've seen some white people I'd like to call nigger. It is a low life to me. A black person is a black person.
I don't think they have an understanding of the love that Tammy has for those boys. I don't think they have an understanding of the love that we have for each other. They're just totally, they're wrong. That's it. I mean, they are wrong.
Tammy and Jake had met soon after she moved to Los Angeles. He's a technician for a satellite communications firm and was a regular customer at the restaurant where Tammy works as a waitress. As their relationship deepened, Tammy introduced Jake to her children, and together they shared their days. Eventually, Tammy and Jake were sharing their nights together too, a decision that would later prove crucial in court.
Did you think that you were doing anything immoral?
I thought this was 1993.
I guess everybody has their own moral beliefs. And trying to find a new life and a happy life and a comfort life, if that's immoral, I guess I am.
Of course, the grandparents saw Tammy's life with Jake very differently. For them, her lifestyle was damaging the children. But for them to gain custody themselves, the grandparents would need the help of the Mississippi legal system. And they needed hard evidence against Tammy. So on the recommendation of their attorney, they hired a private investigator. For 4 days, the private eye secretly photographed Tammy and Jake, developing proof in pictures that they were living together in Tammy's home. After completing his work, private investigator Michael Johnson returned to Meridian. His surveillance was designed to help the grandparents build their case.
What did the Thomases want from you?
Okay, they wanted me to prove either that there was the child abuse, the child neglect, to show what the environment was in California, and also there had been rumors to the fact that she was living with a man, and they wanted me to prove that.
Did you tell them to take secret photos of Tammy?
I didn't know what the man did. The man knows his job. That's up to him how he does it.
We don't know what investigators do.
Come on, you knew that he was going out there to collect information secretly about Tammy.
Evidence that I could use.
And use it they did. In court, they charged that Tammy's life with Jake was harming the kids. Their attorney was Reggie Jones.
Come on, Danny. No.
I viewed the fact that Tammy was living with a man without the benefit of marriage in the presence of 2 minor children as immoral.
But Jones did not build his case on morality alone. Court transcripts show he repeatedly grilled Tammy about Jake's race. Now, isn't it true that you lived with Jacob Brown, a man of the black race? Isn't it true that Jacob Brown, a man of the non-Caucasian race, the black race, has lived with you? You had sexual relations with a man you were not married to that happens to be of the black race.
The very first time you mentioned Jacob Brown, you describe him as a black man.
Okay.
Third time you mention him, a non-Caucasian. Why did you have to do that?
I don't guess you have to do it. It's what I did. I'm reminding the court.
You were trying to put it in the judge's mind that this is something he should think about, that this is a black man?
I'm reminding the court that this is, on one side, an interracial relationship for him to consider, versus on the other side, it's not an interracial relationship. And if you think that's important, Judge, consider it. If you don't think it's important, disregard it.
Do you know how many times Jacob Brown was described in the court record as either a black man, a man of the black race, or a non-Caucasian?
No, I sure don't.
I stopped counting at 14.
I have no idea.
your attorney said that it would be more stressful on the children to live in a home with mixed races. Do you agree with that?
It's something they weren't used to.
I'm
Something
certain
they
it has
had
a
never
bearing
seen.
on any child.
They had no problem giving me hugs, kisses. They had no problem when we'd sit down and play. I think kids are innocent. They're only taught things that adults don't like.
They never came home from school saying, "Mommy, why is Jake black?" They never questioned me when they were with me, "Why is Jake black?" But they question me now.
Do they?
They know color now, yes. Very much so, and they know color should not mix.
Every day in Mississippi is always a battle between the old South and the new ideas about the waving of the rebel flag and all of this. It's a constant battle down here.
Thomas Powell is one of the 2 legal aid attorneys who represented Tammy in court.
They did not want 2 of their native sons from Mississippi to go back to California and be taught that it's all right to live in an interracial relationship and to be taught the new ideas and new beliefs.
The legal war for custody of the children was waged across this cultural divide that had separated Tammy from her children. Legally, the only way for the grandparents to win custody was to argue in court that Tammy's lifestyle amounted to child abuse. In Meridian, the grandparents had hired a Mississippi psychologist, Dr. Jan Boggs. He declined to be interviewed by day 1. But after examining Tammy's children for just 3 hours, Boggs testified in court that these are little boys of the South. Returning them to Tammy would be a form of abuse. It would be culture shock.
No, when he used that word, culture shock, I think it would have been more of a culture shock for him because he couldn't accept it, and neither could the grandparents.
Dr. Boggs stated that they were 2 white Southern kids who would be harmed by going back to California in an interracial relationship. They would be mentally abused by being forced to go back into that type of living arrangement.
This is the man who would decide the fate of Tammy's children, Judge George Warner. Mississippi judicial ethics prevent him from directly commenting on the case.
I tell you what, you can take a picture of me leaving, see?
But during an afternoon fishing trip, he shared his views on interracial relationships.
Do I think it's illegal? Certainly not. Do I think it's immoral? Certainly not. Do I think there's anything wrong with it? It depends on what you mean by is there anything wrong with it. You think it creates problems in life? Certainly. An interracial relationship creates problems in life.
I believe that Judge Warner does not consider himself a racist, but I consider his beliefs and the beliefs of many people from that area to be that of institutionalized racism. It's a way of life and a way of thinking.
Has he ever met anybody who wasn't what he calls a racist judge? What's a racist judge? All white judges racist judges? All black judges racist judges? I may be a racist judge, but I can damn sure catch fish. And you know, let me ask you, when you say somebody's a racist judge, does that mean because I'm a male and this is a male, but he's a fish and I'm a human, that I'm racist because I love to snatch him out of the water? If I am, I plead guilty. How about that? You think so too, don't you?
I believe that his nickname, I guess, speaks for itself. I mean, I don't know about it. I mean, I wouldn't sit here and call him Crazy George. You know, I give him that respect, but I've heard people call him that.
By the time Judge Warner was ready to decide this case, the list of charges by the grandparents had grown. It wasn't just that Tammy was living immorally or that a white woman was living with a black man. Tammy's judgment was also attacked for letting her sister, who happens to be a lesbian, babysit the kids. All of this was weighed by the judge with an eye toward deciding whether Tammy's California life was abusive to the children.
In October 1990, Judge Warner issued his preliminary decision. Until Tammy changed her lifestyle, the children would stay with the grandparents.
It's just unbelievable that they can take someone's kids away because you're in love.
2 days after she lost her children in Judge Warner's court, Tammy paid an early morning visit to the grandparents in a desperate attempt to take her children back.
I just couldn't walk away one more time without my kids. And I said, "It's okay, Chris, just get in the truck." And he got scared and he ran back towards the house. And we did. Grandmother was standing there.
What'd she do?
She pulled a gun on me.
I am suspicious by nature. I have a pistol that I could get my hands on. I took the pistol, I went out the front door.
Had you heard some commotion out
I
here?
heard the boys screaming when I looked out the back door, when I went to the back gate. And so I went back through the house and I grabbed the pistol and I came out this door.
You grabbed this pistol?
I grabbed this pistol.
What were you going to do with the gun?
Nothing. I had it like this. It was never out of the holster. I just had it in my hand.
But you pointed it at her?
No, I didn't point it at her. No, never did I point it at her. I had it, like this. And I told her to leave the boys alone. I would shoot her.
I put my hands up. She said, "Get out of here." And I got out of there.
Would you have actually shot Tammy?
No. No, I wouldn't have shot her.
You just
No
threatened
way.
her with that?
Yeah, more or less. I don't think I would have shot her.
Judge Warner was furious that Tammy had violated his court orders. Tammy Brown's hands are as stained as the character in Shakespeare's Macbeth, who shouted, "Out, out, damn spot." On December 14th, 1990, he declared Tammy in contempt of court and ordered her to spend 30 days in the Lauderdale County Jail, sentenced to begin immediately.
For Tammy to be incarcerated at Christmas time and during the holiday season was about the cruelest thing that the judge could have done. I mean, first they take her children and then they incarcerate her in jail. That's a joke.
Shortly after Judge Warner's initial ruling, Jake and Tammy were married. Believing that Judge Warner could no longer object to her lifestyle, Tammy returned to Meridian to reopen her case, confident that her children would now be returned. She was wrong. After a second hearing, laced again with questions of race and charges of immorality, Judge Warner decided that it would be in the best interest of the children to stay in Meridian. His final ruling gave the boys to Faye and Joe Thomas permanently.
You want me to show you my bat?
Last July, the Mississippi Supreme Court upheld his decision. It's now been 3 years since Tammy was separated from her children, and over a year since she saw them last.
You can't visit your children?
I can visit. Can't go anywhere. Can only be in the presence of the grandparents. Can't go to McDonald's. Can't go to the movies. Unless I want to post a $10,000 bond.
Do you have that money?
No.
Why do you have the children?
Because this is a much better atmosphere, a place to raise the children.
Are you a better mother to those kids than Tammy?
I'm not the children's mother. I'm their grandmother. I could not love them more if I was their mother.
But you're acting that role. You're playing
Yes,
that
I am.
role now. You're saying you're better at it than she is.
Yes, I am. My opinion, I am a better mother.
I wasn't willing to abide by Southern rules. I married a black man. And that's something in Mississippi you don't do. Not and get away with it anyway.
The judge in this case says Jake's race had nothing to do with his decision. But Tammy has a new lawyer from the American Civil Liberties Union, and he disagrees. In fact, citing a U.S. Supreme Court decision, he says race had no business being in the courtroom at all. As for Tammy, she wants to spend a month this summer alone with her children in Mississippi. Her lawyer has called and written her former in-laws several times with that request. Their attorney sent her a fax saying he'll get back to her.
Still to come on day one, behind the scenes.
We beamed up a satellite release at 3:30.
As Pepsi scrambled to save itself from a public relations nightmare. And people declared dead who are still alive.
And I said, if my mother's alive, let's get this damn plastic off.
As many as a quarter of patients diagnosed as not having a beating heart actually do have a heartbeat.
How does it happen? The story, later on day one.
Lasers. Satellites. Cellular data networks. What exactly are we preparing for? UPS introduces Total Track, the only tracking system that can confirm delivery of your air and designated ground packages coast to coast in seconds.
Package was signed for at 9:26 this morning by Mr.
The arms race may be over, but the package race is just heating up.
The wine glass test has been a little overdone. So has the ball bearing test. But in real life, what counts is the corkscrew test. Thread the needle test. Hairpin and stop on a dime tests. The new BMW 5 Series V8s. Their sense of the road reduces the competition to senseless luxury.
She likes milk and it shows. She's got great muscle tone. She likes milk and it shows. Strong, healthy bones. He likes milk and it shows. Baby, soft skin, bright eyes, a healthy grin. He likes milk and it shows.
Milk does a body good with vitamin A to help keep skin smooth, calcium for strong bones, and protein to help build muscle. When you drink milk, it shows.
She likes milk and it shows. It does a body good.
Day one continues from New York with Forrest Sawyer.
It's been a rough week for the Pepsi-Cola company. You saw the reports one after another from customers who said they found needles and syringes in their Pepsi cans. Well, now Pepsi says it is all over. In fact, the company ran this ad in today's papers. Those stories about Diet Pepsi were a hoax, it says. Plain and simple, not true. Some people do dispute that claim, but for now, Pepsi has survived the tampering scare. Day One's Michelle McQueen went behind the scenes with Pepsi executives as they weathered their moment of crisis.
This is the sound of a corporate nightmare, and this is what it looks like. On TV news shows, cans of Pepsi pulled from store shelves and officials scrambling to investigate claims of needles in cans. A week ago in Rock Springs, Wyoming, Peggy Syndergaard opened a can of Pepsi she had bought at a local grocery store. This weekend, she told us what she says she told authorities last week.
And I took the first sip, and no problem. And when I took the second sip of Pepsi, something stuck in my lip about here. And it really scared me, and I let out a scream.
Did it hurt?
Yeah, it hurt.
But we have no control over what happens once a can is opened.
The reports, more than 50 of them, reverberated loudest in Somers, New York, Pepsi headquarters. Pepsi produces 20 billion cans of soda a year, and its reputation was on the line.
We're going at warp speed. We're trying to give you guys as much as we can, as fast as we can.
On the front line of Pepsi's defense, Andrew Giangola, a 29-year-old public relations manager.
We have a production process that's closely monitored. To have one incident is highly improbable. To have different incidents all over the country in different states is an astronomical impossibility. That's why we're here fighting it, and we're going to win.
But early in the week, Pepsi wasn't winning. Tampering reports kept coming in. Pepsi President Craig Weatherup and his team hunkered down in what they called the war room. The strategy? Work with the Food and Drug Administration to investigate the claims and begin a public relations blitz. Have you ever experienced a situation like this before?
Sure. I mean, I don't think there's a consumer products company in this country that doesn't have one every matter of months. Most of them don't hit the press. Unfortunately, this one got out of control and it fed on itself.
This is not an unusual phenomenon for American companies. But what is different here is that this started without a death, without a threat, without anything lethal in the product. And yet you're looking at the same reaction that you had as you did in the wake of the Tylenol tampering, where you actually had deaths associated with it. And that's why I think the company was caught off guard.
To regain the offensive, on Tuesday, WeatherUp went public.
That can is probably the most tamper-proof package. That something is happening after the can is opened, and hence the problem.
These have got to be rough days, Craig.
These are very rough days. Well, actually, I think Wednesday morning was when I felt the worst. I mean, I just felt that, you know, we'd conveyed the facts, and we'd done our investigation, and yet we were getting, you know, at least a claim every hour, and the media was showing us, you know, another state on the map. You know, Iowa now has one. It was.
So you felt like no matter what you did,
I felt
the thing was
like
still going
yeah,
south. You were still getting killed.
We're just hanging out there getting shot, you know, every few minutes.
Now, is this regular Pepsi or Diet Pepsi?
By the middle of the week, Pepsi's consumer hotline was getting 2,000 calls a day, twice the normal number.
Well, at this point, we're letting the FBI and the FDA handle it for us, but we do appreciate your support, okay?
We're ready to go on. Put this behind us.
Finally, things began to turn around for Pepsi. On Thursday, the Pepsi team gathered in the war room to watch FDA Commissioner David Kessler.
Let me repeat that. On the basis of all the information we have so far, the notion that there has been a nationwide tampering of Diet Pepsi is unfounded. We have made 3 additional arrests for false claims that a tampering occurred.
To prove there were copycats and hoaxes, Pepsi released a surveillance tape showing a woman in Colorado inserting a needle into a Pepsi can at a checkout counter. It was a picture worth 1,000 words to Andrew Giangola.
And again, it shows that this can happen in broad daylight, surrounded by people, in the middle of a store. But the tape also shows how easy it is to get caught.
Friday at noon, Craig WeatherUp decided the tide had turned and it was time to thank the troops at Pepsi headquarters. Many hadn't slept in days, and they thanked the boss.
We can celebrate, but we need to leave a little bit of awareness of the fact that there are a few people out in America who are going to try to prove us wrong still. It's pretty tough when you're getting squeezed by everybody, and especially in our case where there was no basis and the facts proved it, even the original incident, that it was a total fraud, every single one.
But several people, including the couple who made the original complaint, continue to insist they found needles in cans. The FDA is investigating their claims, along with Peggy Syndergaard's. She still says she found a needle in her can of Pepsi. And she says FDA investigators tried to intimidate her into recanting her story.
I felt that they did not come in looking at me as a victim from the first place. I felt like they came in trying to intimidate, threaten me. All of a sudden, I was a suspect.
Let me ask you one more time. You saw this needle. It did happen. This is not a hoax.
No, it is not. Some of the reports may be hoaxes, but mine certainly isn't. And they are grouping all of us together. And according to PepsiCo, we're all a liar.
And you're not a liar?
No, I certainly am not.
There was never a production problem. There were never any injuries. There was never any health risk. And yet our product was put on trial, unjustifiably so, for an entire week. Pepsi was on trial, and we didn't do anything wrong. The reality is, our cans were on network television with a needle next to them for a 72-hour period. That's an indelible image, and that's what we're trying to erase.
Michelle, Peggy Syndergaard has made some very strong charges. Where does that matter stand now?
Forrest, FDA officials say they can't talk to us about her case because it's an ongoing investigation, but they reiterate that they have not verified a single case of product tampering involving a Pepsi can. And they also emphasize that at least a dozen people have been arrested around the country for making false claims about contaminated Pepsi cans.
So there's the bottom line. Is Pepsi right? Is it over now?
I don't know. For Pepsi, they think it's over, but for some of the people making these allegations, it isn't. And the history of some of these episodes has been that sometimes you never get to the bottom of every single one of them.
Michelle McQueen, thanks a lot, Michelle. We'll be back in just a moment.
Coming up on day one, why emergency crews and even doctors might mistake a living person for a dead one.
As I was looking at him, something just didn't feel right. And as I was staring at his face, that's when his head began to move.
A medical phenomenon that happens all the time when day one continues.
I gotta go, I got another call. I'm Larry Bonadonna, territory sales rep.
He just walked in off the street.
Like a stray dog. Rochelle is the controller for M&J Trimming.
When he first came, I said, give me an offer, write it down.
They need proof.
He wrote it down and he stuck to it.
MCI started a new program. The company puts it in writing. This is what she'll be saving. If your calling patterns change, we're gonna be able to credit you. We're gonna call it proof positive.
Other suppliers don't do what Larry has done for me.
Proof positive. I always knew I was a good guy, and now I can prove it.
Does your full commission broker have you trapped in fees? Fees for trading, fees for not trading, even exit fees when you close your account. There is a better way. Charles Schwab has accounts with no annual fees and a wide variety of mutual funds with no loads. And for a limited time, this unique offer.
We'll rebate your exit fees when you move your account to Schwab.
If you feel trapped in fees,
maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
Think her robe is white? Not next to his Clorox white. This looks white, but look again. Let's face it, clothes washed in detergent alone can look dull and dingy. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because adding Clorox liquid bleach every time you wash brings out a white that's as fresh and crisp as new. Now this is the real white. Clorox liquid bleach. For a brand new kind of white. Also in lemon and fresh scents.
Tuesday, Joan Collins drops by to take on her cousin.
You're just jealous, because I made something of myself. Where do you get that hoity-toity accent anyway? I mean, you're from Illinois.
Roseanne. Then Jill's got man trouble.
You haven't heard the last from me on this.
Can we talk about this over dinner?
It's a new room for two.
I will never be that hungry.
Tuesday.
Time showed you wasted Washington before. Now here's a new hour of it. A tax loophole that loses the government $3 billion a year. The Great Plain Swap and $999 pliers. Come on, Washington, shape up. Prime time Thursday.
Still to come on day one, a lifeguard who's been on the beach since the beach looked like this.
Every once in a while, my father will say to me, he's down in Florida now and he's 94. Are you still playing around with that lifeguard job, Reggie?
The ultimate boy of summer. Day one continues after this from our ABC stations.
Tomorrow, I'll look inside the teen dating game. Hi, I'm Joan London.
And I'm Charles Gibson. Also, global warming, a threat to the planet or a false alarm?
Plus new music from Mr. Achy Breaky Heart, Billy Ray Cyrus.
On Good Morning America tomorrow.
Day One continues from New York. Once again, Forrest Sawyer.
There was a big news story in New York this past week. A 40-year-old woman, a schoolteacher from Brooklyn, had collapsed in her apartment. She was declared dead by 2 emergency medical technicians, and her body was left for several hours until they suddenly discovered she was alive. The man in charge of the emergency crews called it a freaky occurrence. Well, maybe not. Day One has been looking into this phenomenon, and we found out that the living are being declared dead far more often than you'd think. How could this happen? John McKenzie found out.
It is a familiar scene. There's an emergency. The first and most basic question is the patient alive? Too often, medical professionals are getting it wrong.
I have never witnessed a dead person before other than a funeral home. And I was the impression that they were supposed to be different.
It was January 1992 in a Florida hospital. Emma Brady was already in a body bag, all ready to be moved to the morgue. Her children were at her bedside.
And the room was darkened. Never forget this. And with her head sticking out. But her head was back and she was like gasping for air.
So I went out into the hallway and there was a nurse there. And so I went up to her and I said, "Could you tell me, is that what a dead person's supposed to look like?" And she said, "Would you like a cup of coffee?"
And I turned to somebody and I said, "What's going on?" 2 nurses came in and they was taking her blood pressure and her pulse. And they said to me, "Sir, you have to leave."
And then when the nurse that was with me saw that, then she turned around and says, she put her arms around me and says, "Come with me." So we went in the room and she grabbed a hold of my brother and she said, she wanted to hold on real tight to us. And I says, "What's going on?" And she says, "Your mother's alive." Did you get x-rayed today? Yes, you did.
Emma Brady had been admitted to the hospital for an allergic reaction. 1 week after doctors said she was dead, she was resting comfortably. Her children recorded her improvement on their home video camera and were amazed she remembered what had happened.
She actually knew everything that was going on. She knew that she was being resuscitated. She knew that they were beating on her chest. She knew that they were wrapping her up like a baby. She knew all this. And she says, all they had to do was give me oxygen. All they had to do was give me oxygen, and I would have been all right.
Nobody has explained why Emma Brady was declared dead when she wasn't. The hospital that treated her refused to comment on the specifics of the case, but denied any wrongdoing. The most common determination of life or death is whether the heart is beating. Nobody knows how often medical professionals miss that heartbeat when it's there, when the person is still alive. We only hear about the mistakes that are caught, the stories that are reported. In Seattle, funeral home workers discovered a woman alive in a body bag. In Indianapolis, a 9-year-old girl was pronounced dead in a hospital, then walked out several weeks later. And in Fort Worth, records obtained by Day One show that a 24-year-old man who had a heartbeat and was breathing was still shipped to the morgue. The medical examiner told a nurse, "This happens all the time." The victim continued to breathe for an hour and a half in the morgue refrigerator before workers discovered the mistake and called 911.
I think this issue is a more common problem than the medical profession generally acknowledges.
Dr. Myron Weisfeld is the former president of the American Heart Association.
The diagnosis of life is easy, but the diagnosis of recent death is a lot more difficult.
Hundreds of millions of dollars are spent every year on medical technology. Yet doctors in most hospitals still can't tell, in some cases, if there's a heartbeat.
We use very crude techniques. We look for breathing. We look for movement. We try to feel a pulse to see if there's a heartbeat. We make a judgment, and as you understand, occasionally the judgment is wrong.
If doctors in a hospital cannot find a heartbeat when there is one, the mistake is even more likely at the scene of an accident, with rescue crews who have less medical training. Late one night, newlyweds Charlie and Sally Heminger were driving down a rural Michigan road when their car flipped over. Sally died instantly, and so did Charlie. At least that's what everyone said.
Ambulance attendants came over and checked him with a stethoscope for any kind of heartbeat or respirations, and they indicated to me that they didn't find any and that he was dead.
Another officer, Dale Hoverdink, arrived on the scene after a second ambulance crew also declared Heminger dead.
As I was looking at him, something just didn't feel right, and as I was staring at his face, that's when his head began to move. It moved first to the right and then to the left. And as I was standing there with my mouth hanging open, is when I heard the sigh, coming from his mouth.
Heminger was covered up for nearly an hour without any medical attention. Heminger sued the ambulance companies, claiming their negligence left him brain damaged. The suit was settled out of court. Heminger attorney, Doug Merrow.
What happened in this case is this poor guy lost a chance. He lost a chance at being normal, and he lost a chance at being better off than he is now.
Leaving people for dead when they are alive isn't just the result of sloppiness or neglect. Researchers at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit are beginning to unearth a scientific explanation for this phenomenon. For 3 years, a team of doctors studied every cardiac arrest victim brought into this emergency room. More than 800 cases in all. What the doctors did was insert a slender tube or catheter into the bloodstream, something that would detect even the faintest of heartbeats, heartbeats that could be missed by other procedures.
In the past, it's been assumed that if you didn't feel a pulse, then the patient actually didn't have a beating heart.
What they found was totally unexpected, a condition that mimics death. The heart appears to have stopped, but is actually still beating.
We did a study that indicates that as many as a quarter of patients diagnosed by physicians and paramedics as not having a beating heart actually do have a heartbeat.
A quarter of the cases, you can't tell whether a heart is beating or not?
Yes, as many as 25%. And it's important to remember that that was in a hospital which specializes in the treatment of cardiac arrest.
So what does that number mean nationwide?
It's difficult to apply that number to the whole country, but potentially it could mean that as many as 100,000 people have a heartbeat at some time during the treatment of cardiac arrest, and the people taking care of them don't know it.
So many people, so many mistakes. Much of the problem, doctors say, is that there is little money and little research into what really happens when the heart stops. And that until there is more research, there will be more people declared dead who are really alive. People like Carla Woods.
I knew, I don't know how I knew, but I knew that I was being mistaken for being dead. That these people thought I was dead. And I couldn't tell them I wasn't.
10 years ago in Champaign, Illinois, Carla Woods was taking prescription medication when she had a few drinks. She passed out in her apartment. Her door had been left open, and neighbors called the police.
She laid in there for 2.5 to 3 hours before we removed her to the morgue.
Detective Gary Wright was in charge of the investigation.
All that time, there was absolutely no indication that she was anything but dead.
In fact, she had already been declared dead by ambulance workers and the coroner's office.
I could hear people talking and moving around, and I got a really bad feeling. And I tried to talk, and I couldn't talk. Nobody could hear me. I remember being wheeled somewhere. I could hear the wheels, and I could hear it's like a tunnel.
We took her into the morgue, wheeled her in. When we placed her on the morgue table and put the block under her head to lift her head up, that's when I noticed some movement in the throat. I thought I was, having a stroke or something.
Gary Wright put in a frantic call to the pathologist.
I said, Stan, you better get down here. We've got this dead body down here doing things I've never seen a dead body do.
They rushed Carla Woods from the morgue to the emergency room. She suffered no permanent physical damage.
I had nightmares for years about being in a total darkness, being buried alive, screaming and yelling, no one hearing me. I'd wake up clawing, just terrible, terrible nightmares. I was afraid to sleep. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to wake up.
It really is disturbing when you think about it, John, how very hard it is for a doctor to determine what the moment of death actually is. You'd think that they would be further along than that in 1993.
Well, there is new technology available to better detect a faint heartbeat. The question is, do we want to spend the money on it at a time when we're trying to rein in healthcare costs? Several doctors we spoke to, doctors who have studied the problem, said thousands of lives could be saved with new techniques, but they also said more research is necessary in order to make the case more convincingly.
Well, I must say that your report makes the case very convincingly. Why aren't they moving forward with that research quickly?
Unlike AIDS or cancer or lengthy illnesses, where the victims and their families lobby for more money, for more research, those who die of a sudden death have no one to lobby for them. The families usually just mourn.
John McKenzie, thank you, John. We'll be back in a moment.
The Citibank Visa provides so many services, you really don't need another card.
They were very pleasant. Citibank didn't put me on hold forever, which a lot of companies do these days.
The card's lost. Within 24 hours, I had a new card expressed to me that next day.
The fraud protection program really gave me a sense that somebody's looking out for me and my best interest.
And for some reason, on the phone, they're always very friendly with me. So maybe it's just my personality, I don't know.
Just a few of the many people who rely on the service of not just Visa, Citibank Visa.
Do all luxury cars deaden your sense of hearing? Your sense of touching? Feeling the road? Not when your luxury car is one of the new BMW 5 Series V8s. Their sense of the road reduces the competition to senseless luxury.
She hasn't seen Richard in months. She's almost forgotten his smile. Her train is 4 hours late. Her name is Alyssa. And she's constipated. Get over it. Get X-Lax. It's a pill, it's gentle, and it works. Get X-Lax. Get regular.
Next, Don Johnson's a cop on the edge.
I'm responsible here. He's responsible here, but I'm not.
And someone just pushed him too far.
Find him and kill him.
White supremacy. Kind of hard to reconcile this with godliness and hot-up and turnover.
Don Johnson, Penelope Ann Miller.
Well, I sense you've got some unfinished business wrapped up in this, and it worries me.
Dead bag. Next, parental discretion is advised.
Taking a look at your calendar in a while, this is June 21st. That's the first day of summer and the longest day of the year. It's also the best day of the year for a man named Reggie Jones. Reggie's been going to the beach every summer day for the past half a century. And as Lloyd Kramer found out, that's enough time for Reggie to get a little wisdom and a really great tan.
We're going to talk of boats and shows and sailing wax, cabbages and kings. We're going to talk of many things, but we're not going to solve anything.
Are these considered big waves today?
These waves today are average. I'd say these are pretty average. And it's interesting that you ask that because people really don't know what causes waves. Basically, it's wind.
Reggie Jones is 66.
You know, when you get up on the stand there and after you've been there so many years like I have, you can almost read the water.
At 17, he was a lifeguard.
The young guys are kind of edgy, you know. Okay, where's the action? Let's go, you know. And I said, take it easy, slow down.
At 66, he's a lifeguard.
Oh, that guy looks like he's in trouble over there. I'll say, I know. He's not in that much trouble, though. Just hold your horses. Sit down a minute.
50 years. Same job, same beach. Jones Beach.
It just occurred to me, are you related to the Jones of Jones Beach?
No, I'm not related to the Jones of Jones Beach.
You think you'll be a lifeguard for 50 years?
I'd like to think so.
I've gone from, you know, wanting to go to be a lawyer or something else, and now basically my outlook on life changed a lot just from working with these guys, working with Reggie. And it definitely gives you a new perspective.
So basically what you're saying, he's turned a lot of future doctors and lawyers into lifeguards.
Yeah.
The summer wind came blowing in from across the sea.
People say, oh, boy, that's great, Reggie. Gee, look at all the fringe benefits you get when you're a senior citizen. Ah, take them and shove them. Are you kidding me?
All summer long, we sang a song, and then we strolled that golden sand.
In the off-season, he was a school teacher.
You didn't meet your wife on the beach, did you?
Yeah, in a way I did. She was a cashier up at the concession.
He retired from teaching 9 years ago.
So I must have done something right, because the two boys are now lifeguards, and they're both phys ed teachers. If you have a bad back, don't do these. If you don't have a bad back, I suggest you do them. Keep your feet all the way out. Way back to a standing position. I do 35, 20, and 10. I don't forget how many to do. That's my age. You remember it. The young kids get out in the beginning. They have trouble with this. Not used to rowing a dory. We used to have the old wooden ones. They were better riding waves.
How many rescues have you been involved in?
Good question. I haven't kept track of them. But
over a few hundred.
A few hundred? Be closer to 1,000. I remember going after one girl, and some guy got me around the neck. I'm wrestling with him in the water, trying to get to this girl.
There was the time when his partner left him during a rescue and was fired on the spot.
I haven't seen him since.
Have you seen that guy since
No.
he was saved?
Oh, no. Very few people actually thank you for rescuing them. That's interesting. Most people would think, gee, their life is so valuable. I go up and thank this fella. Now, they're tired, and they're embarrassed. And generally, they just walk away.
Somewhere beyond the sea.
Around here, they say that in 50 summers, no one's ever drowned on Reggie's watch. But what he likes to talk about is the time he went into the ocean and caught a fish with his bare hands. Have you ever heard the story about when he pulled the fish out of the wave?
That's the one I heard yesterday. I mean, he's got this picture of the
So
fish after he
made a grab at it. I got it by the tail.
It's a story that reminds him of another story which...
It reminds me of one story about a friend of mine I started work with. His name was Artie Wink. And of all things, he became an optometrist with the name Wink.
And he tells the story of a friend he hadn't seen in 40 years.
I looked down and recognized Artie. And the first thing I said is, hey, Artie, where's my hot dog?
I wanna be a lifeguard. Help, 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 help. I wanna guard your life.
Also, things have changed, too, over the years, is that we used to have to learn semaphore.
You know how to semaphore?
I'm sorry?
You know how to semaphore?
Semaphore was a way of communicating on the beach with flags. The first thing I learned in semaphore was how to spell lunch. You know, L-U-N-C-H, lunch. Let me out of here.
So when you want to tell somebody down the other end of the beach that you're going to lunch?
Oh.
We don't really do that.
No, we signal with the whistles, and then we get up and, you know, we only have like a few hand signals.
How about one that says, Reggie's got another story?
I don't think they're good.
It must be a terrible thing to go through life with a job you hate. Sometimes I wondered if I didn't have the tail wagging the dog. If I became a teacher so I could be a lifeguard in the summer, or I was a lifeguard and just happened to become a teacher. I don't know which. The iambic pentameter of time, it moves on. the events in a man's life. One goes, one gets married, kids are born. Yeah, you seem like you're looking at a movie.
My fickle friend, the summer wind.
You like it?
Is that new Bonneville yours?
They really changed it, haven't they?
That's sharp. I figured you for a BMW or a Lexus.
Well, I checked them out. But with the Bonneville, I got everything I wanted. Leather, airbag, anti-lock brakes, and the power, the handling.
Mind me asking?
It was 10, 20,000 less than the BMW or Lexus.
We are driving excitement, Pontiac.
I like it.
Me too.
You know hand washing is great for your clothes, but who has time? Trust Woolite in the Gentle Cycle. It turns the Gentle Cycle into a hand washing cycle because Woolite won't shrink, stretch, or fade. Trust Woolite for hand washed care in the Gentle Cycle.
Some people say eating right means settling for less flavor. I say baloney. Well, like Healthy Choice cold cuts. We love them. And with Healthy Choice, I get the nutrition and I get the taste. It's delicious. Yeah.
This all-surface vehicle goes wherever it wants to. These all-purpose vehicles go wherever you want to. When you're on Goodyear Wrangler GSA all-surface radials with triple traction, you get an area for quiet highway traction, for wet weather traction, and for rugged off-road traction from Goodyear. Wherever you drive, off the road, down the highway, wet or dry, try a set of all-surface Goodyear Wranglers. You'll know why we like to say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
Tuesday on Jack's place.
Marry me?
Are you kidding?
The staff plans a whirlwind wedding.
Are you sure you want to try to do this?
More sure than I've ever been in my life.
That may be gone with the wind.
Wedding's off.
Now all we need is a bride and groom.
Scott Baio guest stars in an all-new Jack's Place Tuesday.
Tonight on Nightline, whatever happened to health care? A Nightline poll suggests a majority of Americans are losing faith in the president's ability to come up with a health care plan. That's Nightline after your local news. But that is our broadcast for tonight. I'm Forrest Sawyer. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
For a transcript, please send $7 to Journal Graphics, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.